Right, welcome to session 2. I'm just going to keep an eye on the chat for a second while people are joining that one. And then hopefully we'll all rejoin on this new link. So we will redo this session. I guess fortunately we hadn't got very far. And then we can carry on from there. So I'm just going to switch over to this one so that you can see me. I'll turn me off in a minute when I get in the way, and we'll continue from here. So if you're just joining, we'll go from the top. We have, I'm presuming you've downloaded these session files. You got your default note input lesson if you want to use that one. I'm going to use probably also the finale-like session. We'll use that PDF as well. And then later on we'll need this pop arrangement. So you can download these files. Just so that we have it in this chat, I have a... I'll put a link in there for you in the chat. So if you want to get the files for this session, you can go here. Bear with me a second. There we go. So blog.dorico.com/session materials. If you get to session 1, scroll down the page and you'll find session 2. And you'll need these files. I have already opened this one here, which is the finale-like one, which I think probably a lot of you are going to do. And just as a quick recap of where we were at, bear with me while I just find the Dorico window. So all we've done so far is we've used the Dorico hub window, which was this one. We used the empty project. I chose letter paper just to be the same as many of you. Left all the other options but unticked time signature and key signature. I pressed create project, which got me to here, and I've added a voice. So in setup mode we did Shift P, typed voice, pressed enter or press the add button, and it will get you to here. I double clicked on the staff here. You're probably already up to this bit, and I did Shift M. So Shift M for meter, and I pressed C, which I'd already done, and that gave me the time signature here. And I was just saying we will now add the key signature. So let me just check we're all up to speed on the chat. There we go. Yes, I can see. So if you have any questions as we continue this, I'll ask you and take a break for a second. And if you've got any questions, just let me know in the chat on there, and we'll see what's going on. But I can see there are quite a number of people having joined this session, so that's good. So I will continue from now, and I'll keep an eye on that chat as well. I'm presuming you can all see me and hear me and everything else. So maybe if somebody also wants to let me know that you're also hearing everything correctly and it's looking okay to me, so I will carry on unless somebody says otherwise. There's a question: are you in page view or galley view? So you can at least see my screen. That's a good start. At the moment I'm in page view. At the very bottom of the screen down here we've got a page view and a galley view. There's also fill view in version 6. You can also find these in the view menu at the top up here. You can do page view or galley view. At the moment I'm in page view, but in this project here, I think later on I'll probably also tell you might want to shift into galley view. So maybe we'll do that in a little bit. The PDF shows the notes in G, but the preamble text says set the key to E minor. Indeed, it is in E minor. So what we're going to do now is I'm going from this section over here in this PDF. So to enter the key signature, press Shift K. So you can use, like I said, these panels on the right hand side, and I will put a link underneath this video to Jason Lafredo's videos on setup mode and write mode, and a lot more detail about the panels and comparing them to Finale. And also I'll email you out those links as well so that you've got them after the session. But I'm going to be using the popovers for this one, so I'm just going to press Shift K for key signature, and then I'm going to put a lowercase e. If you put an uppercase E, you get E major, but if you put a lowercase e, and then when you press enter, then you'll get E minor here. So So we've done this bit here, and we're just going to be using, we only need a few note durations. So I don't know if you have decided you want to switch any of the note durations or if you're using the Dorico default ones. I'm, of course, going to be using the Dorico default ones here. So we'll only need 5, 6, and 7, and I will try and remember, as always, to say quarter note, eighth note, half note, but for the people in the UK, I'm hoping you can also follow along. I know that you think, crotch it when I say quarter note anyway. We can work that out. That's okay. So we will do that one. So the first bit we're going to do actually next is to enter the tempo. So we're just going to do Shift T, and we're going to just make this quick little arrangement. And actually, so that you know what it is we're doing. By the way, there's some shortcut options at the beginning of this file if you need it, if you want to change anything. But we're basically going to be entering this piece of music. So doing this little arrangement for a string quartet in a minute. So we're going to start off with the voice and some lyrics, and then add these notes for string quartet, and looking at a few of the shortcuts and things that you might, a few of the features you might use to create this little arrangement. And then we'll be looking at another arrangement for other instruments as well later on. So I'm now going to be carrying on from here. So to enter the tempo, press Shift T. So if I in here, if I just do Shift T on my keyboard, then I get another little pop over here. There is, by the way, 3 little dots on the left hand side. If you need to move this out of the way at any point, then you can move this up and down, or even if you want to put it below the staff, you can click on the 3 dots and move them around. But I'll leave that one there. So in here, you can type all sorts of things. I'm just going to type Q for quarter note equals 140. It also says you can type 6 equals 140, and that's because 6 is by default a quarter note, but you can type Q because then it's quarter note anyway. You could also just type Allegro if you wanted to in here. There's all sorts of things you can type into here if you want to, and then when you press enter, then you get that like that. If you want to edit these, by the way, it also says to edit a tempo, you can use the properties panel. So you might remember from last week when we were looking at some of these options, Control or on PC or Command on Mac, or if you click on this little arrow down here, then that will open the properties panel. Command 8 does the same thing to open and close that. And this properties panel is context sensitive. So because I have the tempo selected here, then the tempo is listed here, the BPM, and also the beat units and everything else are listed in here. And there's options for if you'd added text, for example, it would be displayed in here. So if you'd added Allegro, then it would be displayed in here as well, and you can choose whether the text is shown or whether the metronome mark is shown. There's all sorts of options you can use subsequently from there as well. So if you're going to do this in kind of the finale-like kind of option, then you probably want to press K to turn on pitch before duration. So that's this button here as well. But if you just, when you're on Dorico, if you just press K, it will light that up for you. And you've also, there are some preferences. I'm not going to go into them in a lot of detail now, but there are some different some preferences, and it tells you how to get to those here. If you want to choose whether you want to do things like rhythm dots after a note input or before you input the note. So it's kind of the difference between, are you pressing 6, or are you pressing a note value and then you're pressing the rhythm dot like period, or are you pressing period first and then the number? It depends how you think about dotted notes and how you want to do them. And this top preference here is whether you prefer pitch before duration or pitch after duration. The default in Dorico is this one, which is after duration. And I'm just going to temporarily switch them over by using K, which is this button here. But if you prefer it always to be like that, this just tells you how to change those preferences to your likeness. So I've got mine, mostly in the default options for Dorico, which I'm sure many of you have. So if you just press K or you click on this button here, then we're now in pitch before duration mode. So we're going to enter this line of music from here. So what we have here, we only have 1 bar, but that's enough at the moment. And if I press E, and I can press that on my QWERTY keyboard, and it will enter the E down here. If you have a MIDI keyboard and you want to do it, then you can press the note on the MIDI keyboard, and that will get you to the right octave. And you might remember the shortcuts that we also used from last week. So very quickly, as kind of a quick recap, you might have used some of the options. So, for example, if you were doing, in fact, let me just bring this one up. Bear with me. Here we go. So, if you, oh, no, I would like that one if it'll come back. There we go. So if you are, you might have changed your arrow keys. The default ones in Dorico are going to be that you have to hold down Option or Alt, and then you can use the arrow keys, and that will move this little ghost note up and down. So we looked at this last week this is your quick recap. So if you've entered an E down here, with the default shortcuts, you have to hold down Option. And if you want to move it an octave, you can hold down Option and Command, or on PC it's Control, and then you can move that ghost note by octaves. If you have a MIDI keyboard, then whichever note you press on here, if you're in the wrong octave, then you just go up an octave and press the correct one there. If you've changed any of your shortcuts, and the beginning of this document, the PDF, if you want to follow that one after this session, it does tell you you can just use the arrow keys if you want to, and you can remap those shortcuts. If that's the way that you prefer it, because it's similar to Finale, you can do that as well if you want to. But my system isn't set up like that. I'm more in the default Dorico mode, which I'm sure many of you are. So if I want to move the ghost note, I'm using Option to move that up and down, or I'm using a MIDI keyboard. So it's just the way around I'm doing that. So now to enter that E, of course, we want a half note, so I'm going to press 7. And then in this case, it wants to be tied, and because I'm using this pitch before duration option, then I'm going to do T for tie, and then I'm going to press 5 so that it's then tied to an 8th note. So to enter the rest of these notes here, and all of the shortcuts and the details are in here, but just to go through this one briefly. So you can press, for example, you can choose a new pitch and press 5, and you can choose the E, which is tied, but I only need to press 6 because it's tied over the bar. Dorico will sort that out for me. And if I then say I want this pitch as a quarter note, and this one, and then now don't worry that this one is initially tied, because as we continue entering notes like this, it then becomes not tied, because that's an acceptable rhythm. And then we can enter, so we no, hang on, sorry, that was me looking at one thing and doing something else. Sorry, it was a G, wasn't it, first? So I just pressed undo there to go back. So that's one way that you can do it with a MIDI keyboard. You could enter the pitches this way. If you're in default Dorico mode, so I'm just going to go back for a minute, undo, 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 undo. Then what you might be doing is, if you're not using the pitch before duration option, then the way I would normally do this is that you would choose the note that you want, the duration that you want, and then you enter the pitch. So in this particular case, I want to choose 7 first, and then I can choose the E that I want, and then I can use the option which is Option Shift and the right arrow to extend that note along the rhythm grid. So hopefully you remember from last week, there were the options to extend a note along the rhythm grid and to shorten it along the rhythm grid as well. The rhythm grid being these orange dashes up here. So when I'm not using the pitch before duration option, I can use that after I've entered the note to make the note longer and shorter before I move on to the next note. So I can now press 5 and I can enter those two pitches, and I can press 6 and I can enter these ones, and then 5. And I find that is, for me, a simpler option, the way I do things. You can choose whichever of those methods you find happiest, whether it's QWERTY keyboard, MIDI keyboard, whether it's using pitch before duration or not. But yes, so either way, this document will tell you the Finale version of it, in kind of the pitch before duration options, and the other document, the default one, will tell you that one. If you want to use your MIDI keyboard, you can record notes into Dorico with a MIDI keyboard by just selecting the staff. So you would have just selected the first bar rest that you had here, and you can press the record button, which is up here in the top right, and you can press record, and then you'll hear a metronome click, and we looked at this last week as well, so you can have the recap in last week's session, and then you can just play the pitches in, and it will be at the quarter note equals 140 on there. So bear with me a second, and let me just check some comments for a second. Yes, I'm back. So yes, this was a Zoom session. We had some interruptions, so we've moved it over to a YouTube live stream. Is there any chance to use E minor to get E minor at one point in line with the chord symbols? Possibly, but it's more buttons to press. So it is less buttons to press if you just use a lowercase e. Hi Peter, didn't know this was on. No, we weren't necessarily going to be doing this as a live stream, but we are, so I'm glad you're getting the notifications. Can I select only the signposts on the sheet to erase them? Yes. We don't have the signposts on at the moment, but yes, Elizabeth, you can. You can also just turn them off, though, which is what I recommend. Don't this is a slight aside, but there's a signpost option here and a hide signpost. I would just hide them rather than deleting them. And actually, Mark has also answered that he's answered a couple of ways around for that question as well, so that's good. Mark said, pitch before duration stopped at the bar line. I had to add bars. It would normally carry on, although if you are using the record option, then yes, then if you're using this live record button, then yes, for that one you will need to add bars first. So if you need to add any bars, you can click on the end bar line over here, and you can press Shift B for bars, and you can just type a number that you need. So if you want 4 bars, just type 4. If you want 50, type 50. You can also use it to remove bars and various other things as well, so that's all quite useful. I'm just so I get myself out of the way of some of the buttons I've been pressing as well, I'm just going to turn my camera off so that you don't necessarily need to have me floating over the top of things. So I'll just turn off that one for a second. And I think now we're with some of these things, I'll just move this one out of the way as well for a moment so that you can then see more of the page we're working from. So I'll carry on. I don't think there's any other questions that I haven't answered. A fast way to enter a dotted note. Yeah, I mean, for dotted notes, it kind of depends where they are in the bar. There are a number of options. You can either press the period key for full stop. There is a button over here for it for dotted notes, and if I press it again, then it will turn that one off. And you can also just use Option Shift and the right arrow, because that will extend that note along the rhythm grid anyway. So Option Shift or Alt Shift on PC and the right arrow will extend that and contract it along the rhythm grid. So that would also give you dotted notes. In this particular case, of course, you don't want a dotted note. It wants to be a tie, so that it depends on the rhythm you've got. Or the rhythm you're entering as to how Dorico will display that. There are some playback options here, but we'll skip on for a minute and carry on with what we're entering. So for the lyrics here, we're going to type in the lyrics. If you want to cheat, you can copy the line of lyrics from here. So if you just choose them on the PDF and select them, you can then copy and paste them. I'm going to type them in. So if I choose this first note here, then I'm going to press Shift L for lyrics, and I get the little lyrics pop over here. There are some other options we don't need right now just for this line, so I'm just going to type them. I'm going to type the first one, I, and press the spacebar, and then type can, and write, and the spacebar is moving on to each note. If you found in Finale, I think it would also select the rests, and Dorico doesn't do that. We don't have any rests in this one, but it just moves on to each note. So I can type them in. I can type parts of lyrics. So if I just type the first part of ly and press hyphen, and then type RICS, then you get the hyphens in here as well. So you just literally press hyphen and Dorico moves on. And so for all my, and then choral will be the same. So CHOR hyphen AL, and then spacebar to end with friends. There we go. So you can then, like I said, you can also copy and paste these. So if you've got your lyrics somewhere, if we copy this text from here, I'm just going to delete those lyrics for a moment. What you can also do is you can go into Shift L, and every time you press paste, which is Command V or Control V, then Dorico will just paste in the next syllable. And because I've already put syllables in for you in the PDF, then you just need to press paste underneath each one of those notes, and you'll get the same result. So it should now look something like this. I was obviously doing the Allegro option at that point rather than the crotchet equals option that I did here, but it's basically going to be the same thing. And also, yes, the melisma here was automatically added. So I just by pressing spacebar, Dorico moved on to the next note here. And what that's done is said, well, actually, there's enough space here that we need to put the melisma in so that they know what they're doing at this point. You might also want to put slurs in if you've got hyphens. So if you choose a note here and press S, you could add a slur if you wanted to, and the same for choral, for example. You could do that if you wanted to as well. And now we're going to add a string quartet. So we're going to move on in this little arrangement to adding some other instruments. So in Dorico, what you'll need to do is go back to setup mode. So I've got my little drop down because I've got a very small Dorico window here. If I expand it, then I'll get setup mode. And if it's a bit small because we're also looking at this PDF, then I will just switch to setup mode here. So now I can add more players. Now for speed today, instead of going down here or using Shift P to add another single player and keep going from there, what we're going to do is, actually I'm going to change this slightly. It says the add ensemble and the string section, but I'm going to do it slightly differently, I think. So what I'd like you to do is, at the bottom of the screen down here, if you click on this option here, which is the little ensemble button, so it's the third one along from the left, add ensemble, and I'm going to choose that one, and I'm going to get this ensemble option here. And into here, I'm just going to type string, but then I'm going to say quartet, because I think that's going to be a nice option for today. So ignore what it says here, string section, no bass. I think the file you've downloaded might say string quartet, I don't know, but anyway, choose string quartet, that's what we'll do. And when you choose string quartet, I've just chosen that with the mouse or the down arrow, it loads a string quartet here with all single players, and then press add. There we go. So now we've got the voice here and a string quartet underneath. So when I now, it says here, press Control or Command 2 to change back to write mode. So we'll do that, and we're now in write mode. And then somebody was asking earlier about switching to galley view, so yes, we can do that. So if I just zoom out a little here with my trackpad, so I've got 3 bars here, but I don't want to keep having to kind of go up and down between different systems. So at the bottom of the screen down here, I'm going to click on galley, and then this will be like scroll view. So as we add more bars in a second to this, it'll just be one long continuous stream of music at that point. It's like panorama in Sibelius as well. You can also choose the same option from the view menu up here, and you can choose page view and galley view. So yes, but this is a good option down here, and there's also a shortcut for this which I've put in the file for you, so if you want to learn that shortcut, I do find it's a useful shortcut, especially on Mac, because you can mash your thumb onto both option and command at the same time, and then you can switch between page view and galley view, and now fill view as well. You can switch between those, so you kind of, although it's 2 shortcuts at the bottom, you can just mash your thumb onto those, and that's the way I do it. I don't think it's an official term, mashing your thumb onto there, but that's what I was doing. So yes, somebody said that they've chosen string section and deleted the contrabass. So the difference that you would have is that if you've chosen string section, like this one, then you'll have 2 heads here for all of these silhouettes instead of 1, and you'll get the sound of a string section. And what I've chosen here is the single head version because I chose string quartet, so I'll get the sound of an individual violin at this point. Well, 2 individual violins obviously, and a viola and a cello, rather than the section sound. But that, for this project at least, that's going to be the only difference. The other difference would be if you wanted to do string divisi, yes, you would have had to start with a section, and I'm not going to need that for this one. So now what we're going to do is double click at the start of violin 1. So we'll just double click here because that will start the caret for us. It's an easy way of starting the caret, and it does say you can also press enter to start the caret if you want to. So you can choose the option that you prefer. I kind of mix between both of them. If I've already got something selected, I'll probably press enter. If I don't, then I might double click with the mouse. So your choice. So now we've got to enter this very long note. Now, if we're doing this in kind of the pitch before duration option, then it says you want to press G9. So you want to choose the pitch first. So I press G, and I get the correct note here, and then press 9. And the reason for 9 is that it's the double whole note. Then you can press the period key, and then you can extend it. But that will only work depending on the preferences you've got set. So this is where, these... If you're following this file, you need to kind of follow all the options and the preferences and the options it's got set, because otherwise you can get into this mode where the rhythm dot isn't going to extend things and option shift isn't going to extend things, in which case you need to use tie. So this is where when you choose your option for how you want to do note input, stick with the option that you've chosen. And if you're following this file, then yes, so stick with those options. So in this particular case, you would use T to tie, and then you can add in the dotted note here. So we've got now the same note here. So this was initially added with these 2 notes, and that was 9 because it was double whole note, and I've then added a dotted half note at the end here. If you're doing this without the pitch before duration option, then when you select, I'm going to delete that, when you enter the notes from here, then what you can do is when you say you choose 9 and then you choose G, to enter that one. Then you can use Shift-Alt and the right arrow to extend this, and you can also use things like the rhythm dot to extend that note as well, if you needed to. So I'm going to now switch. So instead of doing the pitch before duration, so you can follow this one if you want to use the pitch before duration, or we can do it the alternate method. And the reason I like the Dorico default this method is I just think some of the options are a bit quicker, but I understand, of course, some people, they have their preferences and the way that they're used to doing things. So the way I'm going to do this one is, let me just bring this one back in here. I'm going to enter these notes here. So the way I'm going to do it without pitch before duration is I'm going to say I want 5 because I want some eighth notes, and then I can just play all of the eighth notes. Oh, well, I didn't actually press 5, did I? Because I hadn't chosen Dorico at the time. There we go. Let me just undo that one. Sorry, 5. I'd clicked on my screen down here. Apologies. So I pressed 5, and then I can enter all of these, and I don't need to press 5 anymore to choose the note duration. It just stays on, and I can just use the notes on my MIDI keyboard. I could also use the notes on my QWERTY keyboard. So that's those notes just for this little violin section. Now it also has a slur on these ones, and you can do it as you're entering all the notes if you want to, but the way I normally do it is, it's probably similar to a lot of people using Finale as well, is I would probably select the note and then shift select this one to select all of these notes and add the slurs afterwards. So I just going to press S, or there is a button here which is also your slur button, and it has a reminder of S. So a lot of people, I think, when they were using Finale, you'd probably enter all of the notes first, and then you'd go back and enter articulations and slurs and that kind of thing, and that's what we're going to be doing in this project as well. So for violin 2 here, it says you can select the first rest, you can press enter, or you can double click to start the caret line, and then you just want to enter this. So if you enter the first bar, actually, of course, the easiest way to do it is you've already got your quarter note selected here. So if you just press E, then you'll get 4 E's. Now if you press enter or escape to stop the caret line, and you can continue entering all of those bars, but now if you just click between any of these notes and press R, then R will just repeat those notes. So that's, it says press R 3 times to create 4 bars of the same. So that's probably a bit easier. And of course the note spacing is changing for all of these because we're accommodating the lyrics up here as well. So of course it won't show like that in the violin part. It's just in this particular part, that's what it's going to show, is because this is effectively our score, so it's making space for the lyrics as well in here. So now we're going to move on to the viola. That was quick for violin 2, but we are going to come back to violin 2 in a minute. But let's do the viola as well. So for the viola, what it says is select violin 2. Yes, we're doing the viola, but we're going to select the first bar in violin 2 here, and then hold down Shift and select the last bar in violin 2, like this. And because Shift extends the selection, and then Alt click on the viola staff. So I'm going to hold down the Alt key, or Option if you're on a Mac, and I'm going to click here underneath the first note here, and that's going to copy all of the notes for the viola as well. So you can also use Control-C, Control-V. I've also said in here there's an Edit Paste Special option for duplicate to staff below. So there's multiple options you can do, but Alt-click is probably a good simple solution in this case. Somebody just asked where you can find the document. If you scroll up in the chat, or I'll just put it in the chat again just for a second, then that's where you can find the session materials for this, which is session 2. So now we've got these notes for the viola in here. Then there are a few things you can do, but what we actually need to do is, you see, we need to change the pitches of these. So one way we can do that is if we turn on the caret here, but we press L to enable lock durations. And when I press L, you'll see it light up here, so that's lock durations. So then either on your MIDI keyboard or your QWERTY keyboard, if you just press C, then it will enter that as a new row of pitches. Now these could actually be any rhythms, and every time I press C, it's just changing that. So it won't change any of the durations or any of the notes. None of the durations are chosen up here. It's not changing any of those. And then I want some Bs, so I'm going to enter B lots of times. Now, of course, there's lots of ways you could have done this. You could have used the arrow keys. You could have selected one or more bars, and you could have used Option with the arrow keys to move those up and down. You could have transposed them, that would probably be a long way around. You could have entered them from the beginning with your MIDI keyboard, but I thought this is kind of a simple way of showing there's a few different ways of doing the same thing. And when you've got an instrument here, in this case viola, where they just want some different pitches but exactly the same rhythm as another instrument, copying that instrument and then just using lock durations, which was our shortcut L, is a very good way of doing things. So this is a simple case. So press enter to turn off the note input caret, which I've done, and now select bar 1 of violin 2, so that's this one, and shift select bar 4 of viola, so that's this one here. And then what we're going to do is just press 5, which is our 8th note shortcut. So I'm just going to press the number 5, and that gives us note rest, note rest, note rest in lots of cases. So that's what we've got here. So instead of, now I think this is a slightly quicker way. It's also when you're arranging or when you're composing, you might have actually put the notes in that you know you wanted, and then you just realise actually I'd like them to just sound shorter. So instead of going back and re-entering note rest, note rest, note rest, which you can do, of course, then actually doing that, just changing the duration. So choosing a note and choosing a different duration means that Dorico will then correct everything else so that the music is correct. Do, of course, be careful that you don't have insert mode on. We did look at insert mode briefly in the session last week, because that would give you different results. But we're not using insert mode. This is just the standard options in Dorico. So now we've got this, so that's good, and we will come back to and add some more options to that in a minute. Let's move on to the cello. Oh, bear with me a second. Let me just check the comments just to check. Hang on a second. I've had to scroll back a bit. Mark, thank you for answering some of those questions. That's great. Yes, dotted quarters. You can also do 66, and we looked at those as well last week, so that's good. And can you select a region, a couple of measures, and transpose that whole region up or down a specific interval? Yes, there are options for doing that as well. We're not going to go into that one right now today, but yes, you can do that, and there are options. One of them is when you've got something selected, you can use the right transpose option. There's also a popover, which is the Shift I note input. Well, it's actually, there's a whole series of tools for transposing and mapping to scales and all sorts of things. It's also actually covered in the video that Jason Alfredo has done as well. So yes, I can link you to some videos for that later on. My lyrics don't display. Hopefully it's just the Shift L and typing in the lyrics, hopefully, or copy and paste them. Somebody can't see string quartet as the choice. String section is a choice. That's also fine. Choose string section, no problem at all. Let me just carry on, bear with me a second. Mark's answering some very good questions. Thank you, Mark. Didn't realise you were going to be here. Very grateful that you are. Maybe string quartet is an option I've set up on my system, but if you need to, choose string section, delete the contrabass, or just choose the 4 instruments. No problem at all. I think we're not too bad. Yes, maybe it's also... Yes, okay, so we'll carry on. So for the cellos, whether they're a section or a quartet, that doesn't matter. So I'm going to choose this bar here, press enter to start the caret. And now we're going to enter this rhythm. So in this particular case, you can follow these if you're doing the finale option, these all of the shortcuts there. What I'm going to do is use the Dorico default option. So I'll bring this in for a second. There we go. So I'm going to be entering this little rhythm here. So what I would probably normally do myself is I'll press 5 and I'll press the space bar to move on by that 8th note. I could also use the arrow keys, of course, because the arrow keys would move along the rhythm grid. But I don't actually need to enter the rest specifically. I'm just moving along in the bar, and now I'll enter some more notes. So then I can play notes on the MIDI keyboard here. So I can enter the first 2. Now I'm just going to pick a duration that sounds about right. So I'm going to say, let's say 88, because that will give me a dotted whole note. So I tapped 88, and then I'll press the next one there, and that's almost as close as I want it to be. I want it to be just go to the end of the bar. So I'm just going to press Option Shift right arrow. So I got a note duration that was close enough, and then I can extend it so it's exactly how I want it. I'm going to press 5 again. I'm going to press the space bar. I'm going to enter these next 2 pitches, and then I'm going to do the same again. So I'm going to type 88, and press that one there, and then press Option Shift right arrow. And you might be thinking, how on earth did you know it was 88? Well, practice. Hopefully since last week you've all been doing lots of practice. But for all of the note durations that you've got, so whichever shortcut you decide to use, when you're using the Dorico default options, then the options I really like is, for example, 66 gives you a dotted quarter note, 77 gives you a dotted half note, 88, etc., etc. So I'm just entering, I realise that I want something that's longer than a whole note, so let's try a dotted one. And then I just use Option Shift to kind of fine tune. Maybe it's not tuning, it's fine, I don't know, sanding the edges off the duration of a note. I haven't thought this through, have I? I don't know what it is, but Option Shift, it just changes the duration of those. And as you do more arranging and things in Dorico, then you'll also realise it works very well for dynamics and for all sorts of things. When you've got something that's a length of something, then you can use the same shortcut that you'll be using for notes. So for example, up here, this slur that we have, if I select it here and I use Option Shift and the left arrow, then I can make the slur shorter and I can make the slur longer with Option Shift right arrow. So it's a really good shortcut to remember that one, because it works in all sorts of cases. Now it says, next, why not try adding some of the following, like dynamics? What a good idea. Let's do that. So I'm going to choose the first violin note here, and I'm going to choose the second violin, and the viola. So I can do all of these three just by holding down Shift and choosing this note here. So I selected this one, Shift select this one, and then I'm going to use the popover, so Shift D, and I'm going to type MP because it's a mezzo piano, like that. All the details are here as well, so if you need them, all of your shortcuts are listed on there. There is a panel over here for dynamics if you want it. I'm not going to use those today. I'm going to be using shortcuts for things. Now for these articulations, so we can add various articulations to things, and we did look at this briefly last week as well. So I think on a US keyboard you will find this is the way your articulations are mapped. On my British English keyboard I have a slightly different sized enter key, so I've got these 4 shortcuts here and they map exactly to the 4 buttons in Dorico. So if I just move this down out of the way slightly, these 4 articulation buttons here. So we're looking at the accents and staccatos and everything else here. They're the 4 buttons to the left of enter. So that's what I'm going to use. So I'm going to say all of these violin and viola parts here, I'd like them all to have staccato dots. So instead of doing them individually, I'm going to choose these notes here. I'm going to Shift select on this bar here so that all of these are selected. And then using the shortcut, I'm just going to press the dot, staccato dot. You can also press this one on the screen if you prefer. But and it does tell you that it's the right angle bracket there, so in blue it tells you the shortcut. I'd also like to add some some other articulations here for the cello. So if I choose this note here, then I can press the accent button. I'll do the same for this one here. So if you'd like to add any other articulations, then add anything else you'd like, experiment with some of those and find which ones you'd like. You probably aren't going to use any of these ones underneath. When you hover over them, it will tell you what these other ones are as well. So if, for example, you wanted to use some of them, then there's a stressed option, there's a staccatissimo, there's an unstressed, which is a smile, isn't that nice, and a staccato tenuto. So if you're not stressed, use that one. Now we're going to add some chord symbols to this one. So if you've finished adding whatever articulations you'd like, or maybe you've copied the ones I've done, we'll move on to chord symbols. So for chord symbols, I think we looked at these briefly as well last week, so we've kind of run out of shortcuts. So it's Shift Q for chords. So I'm going to choose the first note here, and I'm going to press Shift Q on my keyboard, and I get a popover for chord symbols. And in this case, I just want to enter C, so I'll enter a capital C. And if I press the space bar, then Dorico will move on, I think much the same as we did last week. And then in the next one bar over here, we can add E minor. So I'm just going to press enter, and that will go away. So we've now got a couple of chord symbols entered in there. We did look at chord symbols a bit last week as well. So the chord symbols are system items. So if you then added a piano, for example, to this piece later on, it would automatically get the chord symbols because it's a rhythm instrument. And you can decide in setup mode which instruments you want chord symbols on. So they appear on the voice because that's the instrument I added them to. But you can actually choose any instrument in here. So for example, cello, you can right click and you can choose whether or not it has chord symbols for any rhythm section instruments that the player has. They don't have any at the moment, or whether you want to show chord symbols for all of the instruments. So there's all sorts of options in there that you could potentially use, but we don't need them today. So we've now got some chord symbols, and it says your piece may now look like something like this. If you are having any playback issues or that kind of thing, then the best way to reset things initially, because we're going to just look at volume and balancing and panning, and it might not be something you want to do right now in this session, but we will take a break in a second. So while we're doing that, if you've got any issues with sounds or anything else that you want to resolve, you can go to the play menu and you can go to playback template and make sure that one of these options is chosen. These are all the factory symbols on the right hand side here. And choose basically the longest thing that starts with Iconica is the best option if you're using Dorico Pro. If you have other versions of Dorico, you might be using one of the other factory options here. But if you've made any changes at any point to this project or something isn't quite working and it was working previously, then you can just come into this dialog and you can just choose one of the factory icons and press apply and close, and Dorico will reload all of the sounds for you automatically. If you've not been getting any sound out of Dorico, of course, also you can try going to the edit menu and device setup. And you can choose the options in here as to what the default options are that you want to use for playback, so you can change them in here, and then you've got all the options you want. And there we go. So you can choose any of the options, and I think mine had got stuck, so maybe somebody else was having a similar problem. So you can choose. You probably won't be choosing an aggregate device, maybe built-in audio, or if you have an audio device attached to your computer, it will be listed in here. And then you can choose the stereo output, and you can press close, and that will set which output you're using in Dorico. It won't necessarily be the same default one you use for everything else on your computer. It may well be, it may not be, so you can choose whichever option in there. So we're going to take a break in a second, but before we do that, you can have a play with this in the break if you're not dying to be relieved. If you want to change the overall balance of things, then let's open the lower section down here. So Command 8, or you can click on this little arrow, Control 8 on PC, and choose this option here, which is the mixer button. So it's 3 faders. When you choose that, you've got a mixer appearing down here. There is a floating mixer as well. So it says up here, you can also click on this button here, which is up the top of the Dorico window up here. And that will open the floating mixer, which is a bit bigger. If you have a second monitor, you can put that on a second monitor as well. The shortcut for that one is also F3 if you need it. But for now, I think this one down here will be enough. So we've got this mixer down here, and you'll see a fader for each of the instruments. And you can adjust these if you need to, and you can also see there's a pan position. So it says C for center and left 28, and it says right 10 and right 26. So they all have different pan positions. Now the best way to change the pan positions and things on here is actually if you move over to the right hand side, there's a button here for live stage. So it's this one that's a semicircle. So if you click on live stage, then you'll get this live stage window. And what you can do in here is literally just click on an instrument and drag it to somewhere else. So if you drag it over here, the voice will be distant and will be in the right hand side, and therefore it's moved down here the pan position to right 88. You're of course the conductor in the middle down here, so if you want your singer to get louder and be in the middle, then you can put them down here and it will become R, well actually it was R0, but if I clever enough and move it, you can see exactly where you're going to be, slightly left, slightly right, or in the center. So you can move them in there. You can drag this if you want to and change them in here, but it's not as much fun as doing it graphically in here. So you can move them in here and you can set up your ensemble exactly how you want it. There's also some buttons here, so if you select all of these, just maybe dragging a box over them, or you can individually select these as well, then you can use these buttons to move the players further away, and you can bring them in a bit. And that will also change how much reverb each of these have as well. So you're changing the pan position and the reverb by moving them around. So if you want to use that to kind of experiment with any of those options, then you can do. So all the details are in this document. We've got to the end of this bit, and in a second we'll move on to the next project. So when you've finished having a play with all of the play mode options in there, I'm just going to read the chat for a second. If you need to take a break for 2 minutes, no problem. And when we come back and rejoin, we will be using the other project, which is the session pop arrangement. So if you haven't already downloaded it, scroll back in the chat to this shortcut, which is the session materials link. So if I'll just put that in the chat again, there we go. Make sure you've got the pop arrangement.dorico file, and we will be starting with this one. Now, it already has some notes and things already entered into it. But what we will be doing is kind of adding some other items and showing you how some of these things would be done, could be done if you were doing this as an arrangement, and that's what we'll be doing shortly. So I'm going to read the chat for a minute, just answer anything else that's in there, and I'll answer it in the chat so you won't miss anything. If you need to take a comfort break for a couple of minutes, then please do so, and we will start again in just a couple of minutes. There is a question in the chat about the rests. I'll answer that in the chat as well while I'm talking if I can. So you don't actually need to enter rests. But I think probably best if you refer to the session last week. There's a lot more detail for entering rests. I can the details for all of the sessions are also on this session materials page. So if you click on that link that's in the chat and scroll back a week, then there's last Saturday's recording is on there as well. So you can use that one if you want to. And there are a lot of details in there, but basically when you're entering notes in Dorico and you have this rhythm grid, you can just move the caret with the arrow keys to be wherever you want to be in the bar, and then when you enter a note at that point, then Dorico will then fill in the rest of the other rests for you. So you don't actually need to enter rests. And probably 98% of the time, I don't enter rests. Very rare cases. So there is a rest key over here if you really need it, and the shortcut is comma, but very rarely do I actually need to enter rests. So hopefully that helps. Let me know in the chat as well if there are any questions. It looks like string quartet's something I've added, doesn't it? Yes. So I've obviously added string quartet because I use them a lot. So if anybody was having that problem, when you've gone into the add ensemble and you type string quartet, it's because actually I've gone through here in the choose section and I've added string quartet, added the instruments I wanted, and I've pressed save so that I've got a string quartet for next time. Apologies. I didn't realise that's something I'd added, but there you go. Yes, a question about how to... can you repeat how to extend the slurs to the following notes? Yes. Just move that one out of the way for a second. So in this previous piece here, if you have added a slur, so let's just delete that one for a second. So if I've got a note selected and if I press S, it becomes a little slur, like this. If I use the same shortcut that I would use to extend notes, so you can use a mouse. I mean, you can grab the end of this with a mouse if you want. These little circles, you can grab one end or the other if you really want to. But I use Option, Shift, and the right arrow. So it's Alt, Shift on Windows, and the right arrow, and every time I press the right arrow key, it's extending that over to the next note. And every time I press the left arrow key, so Option Shift in my case, Alt Shift on Windows, and use the left arrow, then, oops, the focus is not on Dorico, there we go. Then the left arrow will shorten that, and the right arrow will lengthen it. So when you were moving notes in previous weeks, if I grab a note and use Alt, you can move a note up and down. And if I use Alt or Option and right, then I can move it along the rhythm grid. And I can do exactly the same with slurs. So if I click on this slur and hold down Option or Alt and go to the right, I can move the slur to the right, and I can move the slur to the left. And if I grab a note and I use Option Shift right arrow, it extends the note along the rhythm grid to make it longer. And then if I press left, then it contracts along the rhythm grid to make it shorter. And if I choose a slur and use the same shortcut, it goes longer and shorter. So That's options for slurs. It also works for many other items as well. Let me just go back through the questions again. Yeah. So if your instruments don't show up when you go to the live stage, then make sure you've chosen the playback template. So go to playback template, choose one of our factory icons, and then you should find that your instruments appear. You might find if you're using Note Performer or something else that they don't appear because Note Performer doesn't use our live stage, but our default factory instruments will. Mark's got a question. I will answer. Yeah, possibly. I'll ask them about that one, Mark. Pitch before duration and whether you can extend notes. Yes, maybe. Although people don't, I don't know, they may be using different options at that point. But yeah, maybe. How to set the beaming options. In my cello line, the first three quavers are tied. So you've got, with these ones, it might be if you have entered these, for example, in 4/4, or no, it's not 4/4. Maybe it's in. There are some options for how these beaming options would be, but basically, the options for how things look notation wise and beaming wise, if you want to change those, are in library and in notation options, and there are options in here for beam grouping and what would happen there, and also for note grouping. So note grouping is more about whether you're using ties or dotted notes, and beam grouping will be whether they're allowed to cross beats or not, and how they're going to be grouped together and that kind of thing. There's options for different time signatures, when there are half bars or not, and various other options. So if you don't like the Dorico defaults, you can come into here, you can choose the options that you prefer, and if you want them all the time, then you can press Save as Default, and they will be your saved default options for later. It's also actually covered in Jason's video, so I will add some links underneath this video and email you some links to those so that you can watch Jason Lafredo's videos as well. Playback. There is a little section in the file about playback, just here. So to listen to the project at any point, you can use some of these options. If you select a note and press P, so for example, if you select a note at the beginning and press P, then when you press P, it will play all of the instruments from the beginning. And if you might not be hearing it on the live stream, actually, I didn't check the audio, apologies, but you should be hearing it on your system. And when you press the spacebar to stop, the play head, as we call it, the green play head is over here. So if I press play again, it's going to continue playing from this point here. So this time here, kind of 2 and a bit bars in. If there's a reset button here as well, which is rewind to beginning of flow. There's a shortcut for that one if you want it as well. So then when you press the spacebar, it will play from the beginning. So you can do that one as well. And there are a few other options as well, but the ones I've listed here is you can select something and press P. Spacebar will start and stop from the current play position, and shift spacebar will play back from the last start position. So that one is if you selected this one here, for example, and you played from bar 3, and then you'd made some changes over here, and you'd done something over here, and I don't know, you'd changed some notes and done something else, and then you'd gone over here and you'd changed something over here as well, and then you said, I wonder how that sounds, and I want to play from the same position I played previously. Then you can press shift spacebar, and Dorico will just continue playing from there. So maybe you change a dynamic, and you add another dynamic in here, and you want to see how that sounds. Just replay that same section. Shift spacebar will keep doing that, playing from the same bit, even when something else is selected. So there's a few options for playback as well, and there are some other play shortcuts, but I don't want you to have to learn quite too many all at the same time. So my favourite is select something, press P, it will play from that point. So we're going to move on to the next project. I hope everybody's back if you needed a break. So we're going to use this project. So it's the pop arrangement one, which is called Billy for obvious MJ reasons, and it's just kind of some examples, because some of these kind of things I thought, if we look at how we would enter some of these things if we were to make this kind of arrangement, then we'll do this. Now the first thing is in this one, if you go to setup mode in this project, you have these players. Now I'm presuming that actually what you've done in this project is commonly you would start a project in Dorico. Maybe you started from the complete empty project like we had in the previous project. And what you would be doing is saying, I need to add some players. So you've added some players, and as you've added the players, this is the order that they've ended up in. And at the bottom of the screen down here, there's an order and it says orchestral. So all of these players that you've added are in orchestral order. So if you added strings, they would add down here. If you added more woodwinds, they would be up here with the saxophone. If you added some brass, they would be in here. And this is your percussion section, and and everything else. So this is the default orchestral order. So if you want to change this, then you can just drag them around. So if you said, actually I'd like the voice to be at the top, then you can just drag that one up to the top. And at the moment, this is also a voice and tenor saxophone. So we will be looking at this a little bit later, but basically that's because if I expand this player here, I'm just going to make my screen bigger, there we go. Then this one player actually has a voice and a tenor saxophone as kind of a doubling option. So they're singing most of the time, and then when they get to a solo, they're going to play tenor saxophone for it instead. So we will look at how we would use that in an arrangement as well. There's an alto saxophone, trumpet, and trombone, so that's basically our horn section in here. We have a drum kit, which I'm going to put at the bottom, so I'm going to drag that one down to the bottom. And we've got electric, guitar, bass, and piano. And I'm going to put the piano in the middle, so your electric guitar is kind of the right hand of your piano, sort of, and the left hand here is possibly very similar to the bass guitar, and then drum kit at the bottom. So I'm going to do this kind of arrangement. So you can just drag these players around, and it resorts the score order for you here. If you want to change how the bracketing of some of these works as well, then you can do that. I'm not going to go into that one right now, and we are also going to look at some layout things next week as well. But just for the score order of things here, so as you're working on an arrangement, then you can just drag these here. If you notice down here now, it says order none, so it's not gone to the orchestral order. If you wanted to go back to orchestral order, you can change it, but just simply by dragging these here has turned that off, so that you won't find that you're suddenly in orchestral order again. So I am also for this one, and so if I go to write mode now, or Command 2, then I'm going to also do this one in galley view, so I don't need to worry about the pages and the layout. I said we're going to definitely look at layout things next week as well. Sorry, not next week, is it? The next session, which is in 2 weeks. So I'm going to click on galley view, or you can use the shortcut or the option in the view menu for galley view. So we've got one long continuous stream of music, and I think often when you're arranging things, it's a very useful mode to be in, because you're not then worried about where things exist on a page. So we can just get on with things. I'm going to kind of divide things up. So there's a double bar line here, so I want to add a double bar line. I'm going to add one here between bar 4 and 5, so this bar line. So if you choose this bar line from here, there are some options in the panel on the right hand side, and you've got things like your double bar line here, and there's also some repeat bar lines and that kind of thing you can use as well. But if you wanted to use a popover for it, so you don't have to keep going over to the right hand side, then with the bar line selected, I'm going to press Shift B, and I'm going to get this little popover like this, and I'm going to type double pipe. Pipe for me is it's the vertical line, and it's actually just the left of enter. So similarly, actually, probably to when you've been entering various things like articulations and that kind of thing, but it's the pipe symbol, and the double pipe looks like a double bar line. So I'm just going to press enter there. There are various things you can type into this Shift B popover. So if you're stuck, you can also type double. So for now, if you can't find the pipe symbol, just type the word double, and then you'll get a double bar line in there. So we've now got 4 bars, we've got a double bar line, and we've got 4 bars and a double bar line. So that's the first bit, just so we can kind of visually divide things up and know what we're doing. Now we're going to enter some drums, and we'll go from the beginning. So on this track, the drums are going to come in for 2 bars, then the bass is going to play, and then basically other people are going to join them at bar 5. Obviously, I could copy and paste these, but I'm kind of presuming that all of this isn't here at the moment, and I'm starting this song from the beginning with the drums, and we're going to enter drums first because we've not done any drum note input yet. So just as a little bit of, we'll do 1 bar of drums and go from there. So we're basically going to be entering this, but we'll do it in bar 1. So if you double click, you'll notice here you get a slightly different caret line to what you would normally get. If you wanted to see what we're doing as well, I'll just zoom out a bit so we can see this is what we're aiming for. So over here we've got a little caret line now. Now if I use the arrow keys up and down, then as I press up and down arrows, it's moving to all of the options in the drum kit. By the way, if you don't need to enter drum rhythms very much, then don't worry, bear with us, this will be very quick. But if you do, then this could be a very useful option. So what I'm going to do here, if I move this down slightly, I'll put my keyboard here so you can see what I'm doing. So I'm using the arrow keys just to move up and I had to focus on Dorico. There we go. Move the arrow keys, here we go, like this. So I can move up and down to the various instruments. But what you can also do, no matter which instrument you're on, so if I leave it, I don't know, let's leave it on hi-hat at the bottom for the pedal hi-hat. If I've got my note value chosen over here just for quarter notes, and I'm going to press F, and then I'm going to press C. So F being, if you imagine this as a treble clef, then that would be the F space, and that would be the C, and that's going to give you bass and snare. So if you just press F and C, then you'll just get bass and snare. You can also, if I just go back, if I move up to the hi-hats, if you want to be specific about which instrument you're using here, then I'm going to press 5 for eighth notes. I'm going to press Y, and that's just going to enter something at that pitch. So as you move up and down like this, that would be how you would enter different things at different pitches. And for this, I can just keep pressing Y to enter the hi-hat notes. Now, we've not had to worry about the note head type. We've not had to worry about the these X note heads versus these standard note heads. We've not had to worry about the stem directions. This is the default drum kit option that you'll get in Dorico for this file. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about drum input in this particular case, but if you prefer your snares to be stems up with your hi-hats, there are options to do that. You don't need to go into a lot of detail. There are options for that. There are complete options for editing the entire kit. So if I just move this out of the way, there are options in here for editing a percussion kit. You can choose the stem direction for your snare drum versus everything else. So if you wanted to change things, you can. You can save your own defaults that you've got the exact setup that you want. The great thing about standards is there are so many of them, and that definitely applies to percussion. If you want to use different note heads, all those kind of things, no problem. But this is just a quick version of the default input, and it's all you should get all of the correct sound and options as well. Now for the next 3 bars, we're not going to enter any more notes for these. We're going to basically do the same as over here. So we're going to use these bar repeat symbols. So I'm going to choose this bar here. I'm going to hold down Shift and choose this bar here. And I'm going to hold down Shift so that I can type Shift R for repeats. And that gives me the repeats pop over here. And I'm going to type just the % symbol. So it looks like a bar repeat. So on my keyboard it's Shift 5, which is the % symbol. When I press Enter, then I'll get the repeat symbol. But because I'd selected 3 bars, I don't just get it for 1 bar. I get it for this bar as well, and this one. And Dorico by default has also added this little number 4 in brackets. So the drummer now knows play for 1 bar, keep going, and this is the 4th time you've played it, which was probably, you'll feel that anyway as part of the song that you're in the 4th bar, but it's good to keep that in there as well. And so that's the same option. Just coincidentally, Option Shift and the arrows will also extend and contract these. So we've been using Option Shift for the slurs and for note durations, but you can also use them for these bar repeats. So if, for example, you had found that you'd only selected 1 bar and you'd pressed Shift R and %, and then you realise you wanted it to be longer, we've got these little circles that you can drag with your mouse if you want to, or you can use Option Shift and the right arrow, the same as we've been doing for notes and slurs and everything else, and that will extend that by a bar so that you've then got 4 bars of that. So that's what we're aiming for. Now what we're going to do is presuming we've entered a few more notes and we've got some of the other things, and we want to kind of be arranging this by also copying some of these to other instruments. So what we can do, for example, is actually I've left the piano part in, so we'll delete it and re-enter it so that we can see what we're doing. So let's say, for example, this bar here, which is the piano left hand in the bass, we're just going to press delete and delete that. I wanted to show you what happens between some of these instruments as well. So we have underneath the bass guitar now, if you've resorted your instruments similar to I did. So if I just click in the middle of this bar here, it doesn't matter where in the middle of the bar, somewhere on the staff, not actually on a note head, just between these here, and this is what you'll get. So they're all selected. Now if I hold down Alt or Option and click here, that will copy and paste those notes over, which is very useful, but they are an octave too low. And that's because obviously the bass guitar where it's the notes are sounding and where they're displayed isn't the same. The bass guitar sounds out by an octave. Because you want them to be the rumbly low end, but not for the piano. We don't want it to be all the way down there. It's probably going to be a bit muddy, so let's put them up an octave. So with all of these with all of these notes selected here, we're going to press Option Command or Alt Control on Windows, Option Command on Mac, and the up arrow, and it will just move them up an octave. So just be aware, for some instruments, if they're transposing by an octave, you might just need to jump those notes up an octave once you've copied and pasted them. So you might get that between instruments. And of course, if they're transposing instruments, then they may also be transposing. In this particular case, this project is still in concert pitch. And you will probably, if you're me, want it to be in concert pitch when you're arranging, but then you go to transpose pitch, either to print the score, and definitely the parts will all be transposed. So there are options for those as well. So now we've got, now we're going to enter the right hand here. So this is what we're aiming for over here, but let's presume these notes aren't here. We can't just copy and paste them. We need to input these notes. So if you don't have a MIDI keyboard, one thing you might do is double click here to turn on the caret line. We're going to press 5 for eighth notes. And you would probably, if you don't have a MIDI keyboard, you'd press Q. So you'd press Q to turn on chord mode. So let's just put my keyboard up here. So if I press Q, where then you'll get this little plus here, and you'll also get the chord one added on. So this is kind of a quick reminder from last week for the first bit. If I press B, then I get a B here. It's in the wrong octave, so I'm just going to move it down. And then I can press D, and I can press G. If I move on with the right arrow here, I can get to the next place. Oh, sorry, the next place where I want to put a chord in. I don't need to worry about these rests or anything else. I'm just looking at this rhythm grid here, and I want to enter a chord here. So now I'm going to say C, and then I'm going to say E, but I'm going to say, I'm actually going to press 0. There we go, and then, so I've got a natural, and then I've got an A, like that. So I can then enter a chord that way. So when I'm doing it that way, because chord mode is on, the caret is not moving on to the other positions. Now, if you do have a MIDI keyboard, then this is probably the quickest way I would do it normally. What I would do is I turn on the caret, I don't bother with Q, I don't need it because my MIDI keyboard is going to be doing the chords for me. So all I do is press 5, and then I'm going to play a chord on the MIDI keyboard like this, and then I'm going to realise I'm in the wrong octave, and I'm a fool, and I'm going to undo that. I'm going to play it there instead. And then you can again move on with just move on with the right arrow here. You can also use the note durations and the space bar if you want to. You know, it depends on the bar and the mood I'm in and everything else. And then I'm going to play the next chord on the keyboard. So that, for accidentals and everything else, I find it, a MIDI keyboard and doing things that way, I think is a much quicker way of doing things. So now we've got some of these notes in. Oh, actually, let's just do the next bar as well, because that will make sense, wouldn't it? Sorry. So let's do. Oh no, let's move on, and we'll come back to that. We'll come back to that bar. We want the horns to be doing the same thing. So we're talking about the alto saxophone, the trumpet, and the trombone, and we've got these notes here. So there are multiple ways you could do this. You could, if you don't want to copy these, because if you copy these notes just straight up to the alto saxophone, then they're all going to get chords. That's not going to be useful. One option you can do is you could start the caret line here, and you can go down with it. So you hold down Shift and you use the down arrow, and it extends the caret over all 3 instruments. So now if you play this chord on your MIDI keyboard, so I'm going to press 5, and I'm going to play the same chord on my MIDI keyboard, then it will put one note on each of those instruments. So I can then move over to this one, I can enter the next chord on my MIDI keyboard, and it gives me one note for each of those 3 instruments. So that's one way you could do it. If you prefer to do it another way, if you choose these notes here and press copy, so on my keyboard here I'm pressing Command C or Control C if I was on Windows, and then when you go to the alto saxophone, don't just select the saxophone, hold down Shift and select the trombone as well. And now there's an option which is actually in the edit menu as well for paste special, but if you right click you can get to the same thing. And the paste special option here is called explode. And if you choose explode, then Dorico will do the explode for each of one note for each of the 3 instruments that you've selected for those staves. So explode is another potential very useful option for doing that. So whichever way you prefer to do it, whether it's the MIDI keyboard or the explode option, we put those notes in, and then for the next bar, I'm going to use MIDI keyboard for a second. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to press 5, and I'm going to press the next 2 chords for a second, or pick a chord. If you want to make a different arrangement, pick a different chord. So we've, don't pick a different note duration. I'm trying to copy and do the same thing. And I'm failing miserably, aren't I? If you want to, I'll change those back. There we go. So I want them to be exactly the same. So however you prefer to do those. Now you can also do this backwards as well. So if you choose from the alto saxophone down to the trombone and select all of these and press copy, so Control C or Command C, and then you choose the piano down here, then the same kind of idea for paste special, but there's a reduce. So it will take all of the notes that you'd selected here and it will reduce them down to the piano. So it doesn't matter if you started working in the horns and you've entered all of these and then you're making the piano part, or if you started in the piano part and then you wanted to make the horns using the explode option, you can use one or either of those. I suppose similar maybe to some of the plug-in type options you might have used in Sibelius or in Finale for doing those kind of things. If you also want to do things like add in the accents, you can do those later. So all of these notes here actually probably all want the accents on if we're to make them like these here. So I'm going to choose all of these just by using Shift to select all of these, and I'm going to press the accent key, which is this button here. So it's added accents to all of the selected notes. Hasn't done anything to any of the rests, and the electric guitar doesn't matter because it's just got a slash region at this point. We were looking at those in a little while. But you can add the accents to all of those. So multiple ways when you're arranging of you've got some notes, but just because the other instruments are not the same, transposition key or anything else, you've got options to move those notes if you need them, but also the explode and reduce options to kind of quickly get the information to the other type of instrument. And then, of course, if you want to see the transposed pitch, you can just click on this button here, and it will transpose the instruments appropriately. So trumpets in B flat, alto saxophone in E flat, and trombone in this case is in C. So you've got transposed and concert pitch. Let me just check briefly for any questions. I think we're okay. Oh, Mark, thank you for adding pipe for French keyboards. Thank you. And yes, it basically is sort of Billie Jean, because I thought at least then you know sort of what you're aiming for if we do an arrangement of something that you would know. Of course it is. I am trying to keep these lessons hopefully as useful but also as simple as possible. So hopefully that's good. So we've done those bits. We've used the explode options. We've used the reduce options. Now also for the horns here, we've entered these two, but actually these two bars all want to be the same. So what we're going to do is you can select the very similar to the keyboard parts down here, but this time what we want to do is we want to select 2 bars like this, and then you want to do Shift R for the repeats, but you don't just want a single bar repeat, so you want to say the repeat 2. So if you put %2, when you press enter, then you'll get a 2-bar repeat. So obviously that's different to this one where they're playing the same bar 4 times. They're playing a 2-bar rhythm, and then they play the same 2-bar rhythm again. And we're being nice after the double bar line. We've restated it. Maybe this is going to be a repeat or something else. So we've restarted that one. And you can do that for multiple instruments. So if I do the trumpet and trombone here, I can select all 4 of these. But when I press Shift R for repeats and I press %2 and press enter, then I get the 2-bar repeat in there. You can also copy and paste them. So if you chose one and you wanted to copy and paste it up to the voice, then you could do. You could hold down Alt. You can use Control C, Control Z, Control V, all of those options if you needed it. So for example, down here, this one here, I can just option click as well down here, and it will copy it down for the piano as well. So we've filled in those bits. We won't make you do any more bars because I've already filled those in for you. But let's put some chord symbols in. So this one here, there's not really any point in the saxophone section at the moment. They're not going to need it, but the piano part will, and probably the guitar will as well. So for the piano part here, I'm going to choose this note here. I'm going to press Shift Q for chords. You can, if you want to, play the chord on your MIDI keyboard. So if I play a G minor on my MIDI keyboard, then it will enter G minor. you can use the space bar and it'll move on to the next beat. But because that's slightly too far, I'm going to use the left arrow and bring it back. So you can see there's that orange line. Every time I press the left and right arrow, it's moving that along the rhythm grid again. And I can also type in chords by saying, just type them in. So A minor / G. So play with your MIDI keyboard, or you can type them in. When I press the space bar, it's moving on. So I can move on to this beat here, and I can say this is a G minor 7, and I can use the right arrow just to get to that particular part of the beat there and say A minor over G. So now I've entered the chords here. Now you see they also started being entered for the guitar part up here. So because in Dorico, as I said earlier, the chord symbols are system items, so they automatically get added for any of the rhythm instruments, so keyboards, guitars, that kind of thing. But they don't get added for the saxophones by default. There are options, and we can look into these later if you wanted to, for solo sections when they want chord symbols and those kind of things. But by default, they probably don't need the chord symbols all the time. It will just clutter things up, so we don't do them by default. And you can, as I said earlier, in setup mode, you can change those over if you need to. So let's move over to. Oh, hang on. Sorry, there's a quick section, a quick question. I tried to make a wavy line as a vibrato instead of vib text, but I want the line to start above the middle of the note, but it starts on the left side of it. That's probably slightly more than we want to be looking at right now. But yes, there are options for that. If we don't get to that in this session, Music of Dreamweaver, email me and we can. I'll let you know all the details of how to do those. But yes, sometimes things are attached underneath the note. Sometimes they're slightly left attached. Sometimes they're right attached, depending on the type of item we're doing. So we don't need to enter lyrics in this one because they've already been done, and we did lyrics in the last project, so I'd already entered the lyrics for you. Now, later on, we've got these notes here. Now, we've got voice and tenor saxophone listed here as voice and tenor saxophone voice, and voice and tenor saxophone. So I entered these notes already for you to make this a bit simpler, but I want to explain what's going on because this is different in Dorico to any other application. So we have voice and tenor saxophone as two separate instruments here. When you switch to page view, so if you go back to page view, you only see the voice and then the alto saxophone as part of the horn section, and the tenor saxophone's not here. Now the tenor saxophone, if we go back to setup mode, was part of this same player. So this is a doubling instrument. It's one person who's going to be singing some parts and they're going to be playing tenor saxophone for others. So in an orchestral context, this might be maybe a flute player who's also going to double on piccolo, or a cor anglais and oboe, or whatever. It's a doubling instrument, and that's effectively what we've got here. And the way that I set that up is you can add your first instrument, and then you can click this little plus, and you can add in another instrument for that same player. You can also drag and drop these, so if you also wanted to give them the trumpet part, you can pick it up and you can give them a trumpet as well. Or if they now can't play both of these, you can drag the tenor saxophone out, you can drag it out to a new player if you wanted to as well. But in this case, they're doubling. So how do we actually do this though? Because when you start the project, you only see the first instrument that they're holding, which in this case is their voice. So when you're in write mode, that's where being in galley view is really useful, because in galley view you will see all of the instruments that are available to your project. So all of the instruments that this player is holding. It happens to have bracketed them at the moment with the tenor saxophone, but that's okay. We'll worry about that one later. We probably won't need to. So here we've got, when they're singing, here's the lyrics and the notes that they're singing. And then later on in this piece, here's the notes that they'll be playing on tenor saxophone. So you, as a composer or arranger, could just write for the instruments that you need whenever you need them to appear. And don't worry about the instrument changes. So what Dorico will do is when you go to page view, later on in the piece look, it's automatically saying, here's the voice and what they're singing, and then Dorico's automatically said, and on this page they're going to need a tenor sax, so it's already changed the labels for you, it's already labelled the part here for you, and it's put the notes in for tenor sax. And if they were transposing, then it would also transpose those notes for tenor sax as well. So you can see here they've got the key for the vocal, and then when they switch, it then goes to tenor sax. And there are options for exactly how you want it to switch, and when, and all those kind of things. But in this particular case, it's switching to tenor sax. So I've not had to do anything about the transposition or the instrument change or the labels or anything. It's all done automatically for me. So I'm going to go back to concert pitch for a minute so that the notes are back down here. Now, in this particular case, I've written out effectively what would be part of that same song as the tenor sax. But let's say we wanted this to be a solo. So you can write in these notes as you would with any other instrument, of course. But if you don't want to see these notes, but you want to hear them, and you want them to play, for example, a solo like slashes, like with this, then what you can do is you can select these notes, or select this area. You can actually even start from here if you wanted to. It doesn't matter. I'm going to select this note and I'm going to select to the end of their solo. So I'm going to scroll across, and then here I'm going to hold down Shift and click on the end here. So I've got all of these bars selected in the middle. They're all orange. Now I'm going to use the same Shift R popover, and instead this time I'm going to type slash. So SLASH like that. And when I type slash, oops, Dorico's just jumped, apologies, let me scroll back there. We've now got a slash region that Dorico's automatically put in. Now the notes are still here underneath the slash. You can also see them if you open the key editor at the bottom. You can see all of the notes are still here, so you will still hear them. If you make an MP3 recording of this for a demo track, you will still hear that solo. But the player now will need to make up their own solo, and they've been given the chord symbols because there's now a slash region here. So these kind of things are automatic. They don't have chord symbols most of the time because when they're the singer, and they don't actually have chord symbols until the slash starts. And these slash regions, you see there's a little drag handle here, and you can use the same shortcut. So I'm just going to hide that note as well, just by dragging the handle left, and it's hiding. So they now know they can start the solo here. Here are the chord symbols for the solo, and then at the end they'll end, and then everybody will be playing these notes at the end. So that's kind of the end of their solo. But the notes are still there, they'll still play, but they have all the options that they need to print as well. So it's a very quick, useful option for that kind of arrangement in Dorico. Now let's also add some other things. So let's say we want some dynamics and things as well. So on this last bar here, let's enter some dynamics. Now when you're doing dynamics, you could enter them for one instrument, but that's no fun and takes too long. So if you select this bar here, and then scroll down all the way to the bottom. Let's do it for everybody, including the drums. So I'm going to hold down Shift, click on this bar here, and then I'm going to enter some dynamics. So in this case, let's do Shift D for dynamics, and all in the same popover, enter the hairpin. So just above your comma key, you've got the greater than, and of course you've got less than as well over the period key. So you're holding down Shift and you're pressing comma to get that hairpin, and then let's put FF like that. So you'll get this, you'll get a hairpin up to FF. Yes, you could use the dynamics option over here, but we'll do it with a popover. And that's done it for all of the instruments. So you should have that for all of them. Let's say that there's some other things we might want to do in this. So other things in kind of this style of project. There's some other dynamics here as well. So if you wanted to experiment with some of the other dynamics, please do. Let's say we want to transpose everything. Somebody did ask about transposition earlier. So I'm going to make sure nothing's selected here. If you just click on a white space somewhere on the page, then nothing is selected. If nothing is selected, then when you go to write and transpose, Dorico will transpose everything. So this is going to transpose the whole piece. So if you go to Notes and Transpose, then you can use the options over here. We have a little calculator. So at the moment, this piece is in G minor. So you can say, for example, if you wanted to start in G and you wanted to go to a different key, like I don't know, E or something else, then you can just say I want to go from G to E and press apply, and Dorico will automatically set the options here. So because I chose the same octave and E's lower than G, it's going down. So it's chosen a minor third down. So if I just press OK, it will transpose the whole piece down a minor third. So now we're in E minor instead. I'm just going to press undo. And similarly, if you chose a different option here for the transpose, so use this calculator because it will save you having to calculate what the options are and the qualities and the intervals and those kind of things. So yes, use this calculator, press apply, and it will set all of the options for you, and all you have to do is press OK. There are other options as well. Like I said, there's a Shift I option here, and you can use this tool as well to do various transpositions. So if there's transposition just for some individual notes, you can also use this to generate chords. So in your piano example here, if you'd started and just put in, for example, the two lowest notes, so let's say we just put in these two, and you wanted to build up chords, then you can select these, use Shift I, and you can do things like, say, add a third, and if you say comma 4, for example, then you would get a third and a fourth above the lowest note, and you can build up your chords this way if you wanted to. So if you want to say, I want to enter a third and a sixth above those, then you could do it that way. You can also do things in here like, say, you can do a minor third and a sixth and things like that as well, and there you can do intervals above and below, and various other options that you can do if you so wished in that popover, as well as transposition and various other things. There is a popovers guide that I think we've mentioned before. If not, I can give you a link to it of all of the things you can type into popovers. In fact, because we've been using it a lot in this session, I will put a link underneath the description, but I'm just going to find that one for you as well, because it's in our manual section. I think you probably find it quite useful, so bear with me a second. Here's the particular bit for the ones I've just been using. So that's for the popover entries for kind of things that you can type in there, and things that you can use, and those kind of things. And but yes, there's I'll also put a link underneath when we finish this session to a PDF that you can download, which has all of the things you can type into popovers, so that you've got a list of shortcuts. Let me just check for a second on a couple of the questions. Oh, that would be cheating. But yes. So somebody was asking about chord symbols. So when you're entering chord symbols, I'll just delete these for a second. You can also select notes, and there is an option to generate chord symbols. And you'll notice, there's all sorts of things that you can create in lots of these menus and things. And if you can't find something, another tip that I use often when I'm arranging things, if you just press J, you'll get the jump bar, and it'll remember the last thing you typed, which obviously was beam together for me. So if I press J and then I say things like generate, then you can generate chord symbols from the selected notes. So I'll just we'll do every beat. So it will generate the chord symbols. Now, because I didn't choose the bass notes, it's just chosen from the things I had selected and generated me chord symbols from those. So if you'd selected bass notes as well, it would make other choices. So if I just undo that and say, actually, do it this way, press J, generate chord symbols is the thing that was already there. So if I just press it again, there we go. So now we've got, and it's actually, it's picked, because it's picking every beat, then it's decided actually, yes, we can use that. But there's also options when you run that and in that dialogue as to whether you want to be specific, what do you want to do with bass notes, how you want those kind of things to do, so you can choose some of the options. But yeah, so that is another option. And there is also then an option, if you wanted to, let me just go back for a minute, go back, there we go. You can also use that to cheat and make notes for players as well. So if you're doing an arrangement and you choose these instruments here, and you press J, but this time you say generate notes from the chord symbols, then you can choose, let's say, note per beat. Then it will also generate notes for you where the chord symbols happen, and because it changed on an off beat, and that's how it's generated them for you. You can also do things like that and say, but actually do that, but use another instrument for the use an existing rhythm where possible. So if you wanted to use the piano as the rhythm that it's using when it's doing those, then you can do that as well. So now it's using the bass note, the bass line here, because that's what the piano is playing, to generate those. So there are other options as well that you might use when you're arranging things, maybe slightly cheating. There are a few other things that you might want, especially in this kind of style, I think. So things like rehearsal markings. So if you wanted to do rehearsal markings, choose a bar line like this, and then just press Shift A, and Shift A will give you a rehearsal mark. So I've chosen this bar line, but Shift A, of course, puts the rehearsal mark here. You may find, if you start other projects in Dorico, that it actually sits slightly further over the top of the notes over here. But we've set in this project, and it's my preference to align it with the systemic bar line here, so it keeps them out of the way when they're at the beginning of a system. You may find if you try this somewhere else, so for example, if you're a random bar line, if you choose a random bar line and press Shift A, then it will kind of sit it over the top of that bar line, of course. You'll also notice that Shift A has not putting in the letter A, it's putting in the next rehearsal mark. And because this one, even though I entered it first and I've put this one in later, it's automatically sorting the numbers out. So if I put one in here and press Shift A, then it will now do A, B, C. So it will keep the order correct, unless you use the properties panel and you edit what the index for any of these is. If you needed, I don't know, A2 or something, then you can do that as well. But just to generate a rehearsal mark, you just press Shift A and it will do that for you. You might also have things that you want to do, like adding text items for verse and chorus and that kind of thing. So maybe at the intro over here we wanted to do some system text. So there are two text options in Dorico, or two main categories if you like. If I choose any staff here and press just Shift X, then I get the text tool and I can type options into here for all sorts of things. So you could, I don't know, maybe you want to say this is just text or something, whatever you type, it will only apply for that instrument. Now this popover is slightly different. If I press enter, it will give me another line, so I can write a block of text if I needed to. So in this case, you type Control Enter or Command Enter, and that will OK the text. You can actually press Escape as well, but that will then give you that text. Now it's attached to that one staff, so it doesn't apply to any of the others. Now the other one you want is, no matter which instrument you pick, if you press Shift Alt X or Shift Option X on Mac like I am, then this text item, I'm going to say this is intro, and I'm going to press Command Enter, and this is going to sit at the top of the project up here, and that's because it's system attached text. And you can see the difference because this item here that's selected down here says system attached text, and if I chose this item here, it says staff attached text. So you can see the difference. But of course this one jumped to the top anyway, because it's system text. This is also a system item. So these will appear on all of these parts. So even if I choose electric guitar and go to the part, which I'm going to do by pressing W, I can choose the list here, but if I have an item selected and I press W, I can jump to the part, and you've got these system items. But the trumpet part would also have this is just text, because it was there just on their item. Now, in actual fact, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to show you something that I honestly think maybe we should have added as a default option and we haven't. But so I want to show you for this style how you would do it. If you go to the library menu for me, go to paragraph styles. This is all of the different text type things that you can create. And I've already done this twice, and I've already got these. So I'm going to delete them so we can start again. We're going to make a boxed text style. So I'm going to click the plus button here, and that's going to give me a new paragraph style. And I'm going to call this boxed text, like that. So I'm going to make box text, and I'm going to press Tab just so it moves on, or you can just use your mouse, and choose what you need. I'll leave the font exactly the same. You can change it if you want. I'm going to leave the size. You can change it if you want. I'm just going to turn on border. So now I've got a boxed text item here called box text. I'm going to add, I'm going to maybe a little bit of padding at the bottom, maybe 1 point. I'm going to do a bit of left and right padding, in fact a bit more of that. There we go. So I've got a nice box sat around some text in here. So that's all I'm going to do. It's just literally I've turned on a border, but other than that it's using the standard options. You could even choose the parent as being the default text. If you want it to always follow the same styles as everything else, then it can follow the default text style, but with the addition of having a border. So you can do that if you want to. Now I'm going to press OK. And now when I create text, so I'm going to go back to here where I was before. I'm going to press Shift Option X or Shift Alt X if you're on Windows. And in here, instead of just typing the text, I'm going to choose from here my paragraph style. So I now have a box text style. So now when I type and I say intro, and I just press Command Enter, it gives me the box here automatically with intro. So now when I move on and I want, let's say the verse is going to be here, I can press Shift Option X. I can just type verse. I can enter that, and that would give me the standard option. But what do you want to do? You want to choose the boxed option. So you can go to here and you can say box text and you can say verse. Now, when you get really clever with this, you can also make your own shortcuts for these if you want to. I won't go into it right now. We're getting a bit late in the day, but you can make your own shortcuts for those. So you can have a shortcut that you use that always does box text, and a shortcut you use that always does a different type of text if you want to. But they're all defined by these paragraph styles, so you can set those up with whatever font sizes, styles, and everything else you want. But I quite like the boxed options for those myself. I think maybe to finish, we'll just do a few repeat markings. They're not really going to make a lot of sense in this project, but it's the kind of thing you might want to do. Sorry, there's a quick question as well about a link for transpositions. No problem. I'm going to add some details underneath this project. Underneath this video, so that there'll be links to other things about transpositions and popovers and those kind of things. So don't worry about that if you didn't catch that when we were discussing that and you didn't do notes. No problem. Let's just say we're going to add some repeats to this as a finish. So these won't make sense, but let's, just so that you know the kind of things you can do. Let's say on a bar line, pick any bar line you like. We'll use this double bar line as an example. There are some other options in here, as I said, for things like repeats. So if you wanted to change this to a start repeat, you can just choose the start repeat item in the right-hand panel over here. It gives you a start repeat. I'm just going to press undo. I'll show you another option for doing that. So we've chosen a bar line, and we can use Shift B. And in the popover, we can type what looks like a repeat. So if I type pipe colon, then it looks like a repeat. And when I press enter, then I get a start repeat. If I choose this bar line, for example, and do Shift B, and then if I do colon pipe, then you'd get an end repeat instead. Now, this doesn't make any sense because they're just going to be playing the same note a lot around in a circle, but it doesn't matter. You now know how to create those if you need them. You've also got some other options. So, for example, if you wanted to say, I don't know, the end of this verse here is a first time repeat, you can choose a bar like this one here, and you can use Shift R and you can type end. And if you type end, then Dorico puts an end repeat and a first time bar here and a second time one over here, so that it can continue for the second time repeat. So if you need those kind of things, you can do it. And if I just press undo again, if you wanted it to be a 2 bar, so there's a first time bar lasting 2 bars and then an end repeat, select these 2 bars, type Shift R and type end, and then you've now got that as well. So there's the 2 bars and then the end and then the second time bar over here. There are also some other properties for these. So if you choose these, and at the bottom down here you can say how many endings there are. So if you want 3 endings, then now there's 3 endings. You can say the number of times played as well, so you can change this one. You can say, so for example, it's now 4. If I just undo that for a second and go back, undo, so I've got first and second, and if I say the number of times played, if I change this to 3, then this is the first and second time, and this is the third. If I change this to 4, this is the first to third time, and this is the fourth. So the options down here in the properties panel can do many of those things. There's also things, of course, like coders and those kind of things. So if you choose a bar or a bar line, or wherever you want that to happen from, you can also type things like in the Shift R, you can type things like coder, and it will automatically make you a coder with the right symbol. And you would then need things like a DS and those kind of things. So you can do those as well. You can choose a bar, you can do Shift R, you can type literally DSL coder, and it will put a DSN. You can still drag these items around, so if you want them to be in a different bar or attached somewhere else, you can still move them later, no problem. You can also do things like you would need a sign to go from. So let's say over here or wherever you want it to be, you can just do Shift R, and if you type $, there's a use for a dollar symbol outside of America. If you type that one, then it would also give you the Senyo sign as well. And you can type Senyo. There's all sorts of things you can type to get these kind of repeats. So all of those kind of things, they exist. There are options for all of those if you need them for this kind of style. Now, obviously, I've ruined this piece completely. Possibly you have as well if you've been copying all the options. Let me just check a couple of the questions again. Bear with me a second. Martin, you're asking about clef changes involved with repeat bar lines. You can add clef changes yourself. There isn't an automatic option if there's a clef change and then you go back to a repeat. You might need to add another manual option in at that point, but not quite sure if that's what you mean or not. But we are looking into, can we make those a bit more automated in the end one day? And somebody's also asking, I wanted a clef change to be on the left side of the bar line. Yes, they're not normally supposed to be on the left side of the bar line. They are normally supposed to be where we put them. And if you have a look, for example, I think in behind bars, there are examples of where they would happen. So there are sometimes options for some of those in Dorico where there's a good case. So I think you're saying if you've put a clef change in somewhere, so is it maybe with a repeat? I'm not sure which one you're doing, but if you've got a clef change in, then it's at that side of the bar line, which is normally correct. But yes, I mean, Mark's also said you can also there are other options if you needed to do those. So you might be copying Bach, but that might not necessarily be the correct way we do things these days. Like I said, there are options for some of these. There are lots of preferences in Dorico where we can only set one of the options as a default, and there are other options to change it. And there's also no saying that the publisher who was writing things was necessarily correct when they did it. Might depend how old the edition is as to which rules they're following. Sometimes we have preferences for some of those options. Sometimes we have other options and ways you can do that if you need it. So for all of those, if there's something like that you're yes, what did he know, as he said? If there are questions like that and you've got kind of very specific cases of how do I do something, then yes, please do email me if you've got those kind of questions, and I'll do my best to answer those as well. Somebody's asked, can I get the PDF for session 1? And yes, that's no problem. So if you're on the session materials page, this one, which is I'll just put a link in the chat again, bear with me a second. There we go. Then at the top of the page, we have the 3 downloads that we were using in session 1, and there's the recording here of the previous session. I'll also link them together on this YouTube channel so that they'll be in a playlist as these sessions get put together. So this one will now get added to that playlist as well. The files for session 2 are here, and I'll put the links down here as well for that playlist. Somebody's asked about changing the size of a couple of things. So every time I've looked for these symbols and what size they should be, they're not actually normally published as large as people seem to think they are, but you can change them. So if you choose this one here, then there's a couple of options for changing it, and in particular, one of the options you can change, you can have a custom scale down here. So if you made this 200%, then it's going to be a lot bigger. So there are often options down here in the properties panel as well, but actually for a lot of these items, there's also options in the library menu and engraving options, and you can look at all sorts of things to do with repeat markers and how they should appear, what size, what style of various options there are, how you want your coders to display and these kind of things. Like I said, there's lots of preferences and options in Dorico for how various things would display, and just because we've chosen something as a default doesn't mean you can't change it to something else and press save as default and keep that as your default if you so wished. Are there any other questions for this session? If not, then I will just mention a couple of other things. So yes, if you've got any questions, put them in the chat just while I'm finishing off. So in these full for Dorico Masterclass sessions, we've done the Saturday session 1. This is the Saturday session 2. There is a week gap, so it's not next week, but the week after, on the 4th of October, will be session 3, which is on layouts. So making a title page, customizing your scores and parts, that kind of thing. So things like, in here, oh, interesting. I've obviously I've pressed undo too many times and changed my styles. Never mind. Apologies for that. I've made a collision, which I wouldn't normally do. Let me move that out of the way. So things like, your project lyricist, and when you're in engrave mode, what do these green boxes mean? And how would you get a subtitle under here? And and how would you make your style and the options that you want to appear? How would you get an arranger over here? Those kind of things will be definitely including, as well as when you're doing a layout of something. How do you get a bar to switch pages or to switch systems and those kind of things. So all of the layout type of things that we're going to be doing, then we're definitely going to be looking at those kind of things in the next session. So yes, if you haven't signed up already, then here's the link that I'm now looking at on this page for all of these sessions that we'll be doing. The session after that, the week after that, will also be on XML import and playback. So if you have Finale or Sibelius files or any other XML files that you want to import into Dorico, now you've learnt a few things in some of these other sessions, we'll import some of your projects and we'll have a look at those options as well. So you can import projects you've worked on previously. If you want to, we're also doing these sessions on Wednesdays, so you can sign up. So I'll be on this coming Wednesday, we'll be starting again with session 1, and then we'll be running those for 4 weeks. So we'll be doing this session again on the 1st of October, and then we'll be doing the layouts one and the other one in October as well. I think we'll probably be likely doing all of these as live streams based on the issues we've had today. So we'll definitely run them all as live streams and probably update this page with the various links to things. But if you have already signed up for things, don't worry, we've got your details, so we can email you with the links and tell you how you can sign up for those. There will no doubt be more session material files to download as well next week. So yes, if you you'll be able to get those and join the session. So yes, hopefully that's been useful for you. So let me just check a couple of the comments that we've got that have just been added. Hang on a second. So the real book, Berkeley, Chuckshire, and have all coda senios sized as overlarge. Yes, I mean the real book was also copied quite a while ago by Berkeley students. There's no saying they necessarily got them right and they were handwriting things. But yes, I understand in certain styles, and certainly when I'm playing things, I might as well make I might make them bigger as well. But there are lots of published examples as well that we've looked at from Boozy and various other places, and they're not actually oversized in lots of those ones. So you can make them oversized if you want to. You can change your own defaults, no problem. They might just not be the Dorico default out of the box. Yes, somebody found it terrific and informative. I'm really glad to hear that. Somebody would love to have frames snap to each other. Yes, potentially we could have alignment and all sorts of things. That would be potentially useful. We can probably look at some of the grid and ruler options next week as well. Yes, as Mark's pointed out, you can define a percentage for repeat markers and save that as default, so it won't bother you anymore at all. No problem. And yes, the real book is often played from in a dark club, yes, which is probably also why... I mean, if you're playing from the real book, you've memorised them all anyway, haven't you? Maybe not. Always somebody's going to say, shout from the top, from the head, or from the coda, or that repeats. You want to know where they are. And yes, I mean, that's why highlighter pens were also invented, as well as torches and iPads. If you're playing in the dark club these days, get an iPad. So hopefully that's been useful. I think we will probably finish up for the session for today. So I will be... I'll send you the link just in case you need it, but this live stream link that it's on now, you'll be able to watch this session again on this link if you need to. If it changes at all, don't worry, the links will be on this this session recordings page here, so you'll be able to get the links to any of the previous sessions. You can download the files, you can recap any of the things that you need to from any of these sessions and watch them again to your heart's content. And hopefully you'll join me. So if you're following these Saturday ones, then it will be in 2 weeks' time. So not next week, but in 2 weeks' time, we'll be looking at layouts on Saturday the 4th of October at these times, depending on which time zone you're in. So it'd be 7 PM for me, but it may be a different time depending on the time zone you're in. If you're in Europe, it might be even later. But yes, it will be one of those times on the 4th of October. So thank you very much. Thank you for joining today. And yes, do let us know, as I said, if you've got any questions that you want us to look at in any future sessions. So thank you very much. I will see you in a couple of weeks.